In this section, we're going to look at how to set up a drum kit. And the first thing we're going to start with is the stool. Now this has got to be at knee height. So where your cushion and your pad is going to be at the same height as your knee. So when you sit down, you get the perfect angle. So the seated position should be really relaxed. Everything's nice and even and symmetrical, and you can just put your hands on your thighs. The next thing to add in is both a bass drum and a hi-hat. And this should go exactly where your feet are now. So now we've added in a bass drum pedal and a hi-hat. And you can see my position hasn't changed at all. Both my legs are still in a relaxed position and my feet are where they were. The next thing we're going to add in is the bass drum, which is the biggest part of the kit, and it's going to be attached to the bass drum pedal. Now we've added in the bass drum. This gives us an idea of how much space we have left to put the snare drum in between our legs. So now we have the snare drum between our legs. The only thing left is to figure out how far forward or back the snare drum needs to be. And for this, we're going to use our sticks. Where our hands were resting on our thighs, all we're going to do is lift the hands up so they're above the rim of the snare drum. When they're there, we're now just going to place the sticks into those hands, and the ends of the sticks and the tips of the sticks should arrive dead center of the snare drum. Still, everything remains very, very relaxed. If the snare drum is too close to you, you find your elbows come back, and as you're playing, everything in your shoulders is really, really tense, and you can develop a lot of problems that way. Alternatively, if you're too far away from the kit and the snare drum's too far forward, you end up using again a lot of shoulder muscles that aren't necessary to hold your arms out in front of you. The next thing we're going to add in is the floor tom. So the floor tom is quite easy to get the placement right for. So all you need is a gap between the edge of the snare drum and the floor tom, enough for your leg to use the bass drum and bounce up and down between. The next thing is it's usually slightly lower than your snare drum and angled towards you very, very slightly. The next thing we're going to add in is the ride. So here I've got a drum kit that's a 4-piece, which basically means bass drum, snare drum and 2 toms. You might have a 5-piece, which is more of a standard beginner's kit, which will have 3 toms instead of 2. In this case, you'll have to raise the ride up a little bit more. In the case of this drum kit, I haven't got tom 2, so I've got space to lower the ride a little bit more. So we're going to place the ride at a nice angle, which is slightly angled towards us and not too high, because it's a big cymbal, it creates a huge sound. We don't ever really smash the edge of the ride. That's usually for things like crashes, which we're going to add in next. So lastly, we have the crash. This is going to be the highest part of the kit, raised above everything else. And this is so we can hit the edge of the crash to really get a swelling, washing sound as we drive in some genres like rock and metal. Now the last thing to note is how everything is positioned and angled. It's all based around that initial relaxed position we started with, which is where our feet are evenly spaced on the floor and our hands are resting on our thighs. If we just pick our hands up and put the sticks in them, firstly we should have the tips of the sticks resting in the dead center of the snare drum. And next, if we just lift our hands up and twist at the waist and move around the kit, the tips of the sticks should arrive at the center or on the edge of every part of the kit that we're going to need. So if I need to split anything up, I don't have to really contort myself and stretch around the kit to get to any part of it. One last thing to maybe note is the height of the hi-hat. Some people prefer to have it really high and some people have it really low, almost just above the snare drum rim. Now I find if I put my fist on the snare drum and do a thumbs up, that's about perfect for me, the difference between the height of the hi-hat and the snare drum. This gives me enough gap for my left hand to be underneath my right hand when we cross over. So when I play things, they don't get in the way of each other. Where in the beginning, when you start out learning drums, you might find you clash sticks quite a lot. So gauging the height of where you like your hi-hat is quite an important thing.